It's pretty important to understand the scale of frequencies that we use when we talk about describing sound, and that is quite often described as in hertz or kilohertz. Really low, rumbly kind of sounds, thunder rumbling in the background or an air conditioner in the ceiling, quite often something, say, between 20 hertz or 60 hertz or 120 hertz, really low rumbly sounds, low end. Whereas the high end of the spectrum, FM radio sort of goes up to about 16 kilohertz or 16,000 hertz. Experts might want to weigh in on this, perhaps goes to around 20 kilohertz, maybe 22 kilohertz. So that's sort of the spectrum of the frequencies that the human ear can perceive. And when it comes to sound recording, you need to understand what people can hear, what they can't hear, what frequencies really cut through and grab people's attention. In radio, for example, if you want to make someone sound like they're coming through a telephone, you would look at the frequency spectrum on your recording, and you actually remove all of those low end frequencies, maybe roll off everything under 200 or 300 hertz, which is all the low end sounds, and then you're left with a very, very thin sound, which is all of the top end frequencies, and then maybe you might want to roll off some of the very high end frequencies, and you're left with a very mid frequency sounding recording. So understanding what sounds kind of fall at what frequencies helps you manipulate your recording and helps with things like sound design and just making a sound or a recording really stand out. And anyone who's like mixing engineer for music would understand this, because when they come to mastering songs, it's about really creating that final sound and making sure that it's not all just sitting in one part of the frequency spectrum, but you've actually got a really dynamic sort of recording. Different voices can cover different parts of the frequency spectrum. That being said, I couldn't say that females are at one part and males are another. I hear some really high sounding male voices or some really low sounding female voices. I think generally you can pigeonhole human speech into a bit of a frequency spectrum. That being said, when you think about people who've got really baritone, deep voice, they might occupy that lower part of the spectrum a little bit more, where people who have no sort of none of that bottom end depth in their voice or might be a little bit further up. You can't put females or males into one part or another. I think it's just too broad. I think with voices, the quality of someone's voice may occupy certain frequencies more than others, and maybe there are frequencies that are more pleasing to the ear. Maybe that's the question. If you hear someone speaking and you just naturally their voice is very comfortable with you or whatever, just because the frequencies more pleasing to your ears, and that's great. Other people you might find have an annoying voice. Maybe it's because their voice is occupying some of those high frequencies more, which can sort of grate on your ears a little bit more. Maybe they just speak louder. Someone has a very high sort of pitch sounding voice and they're also loud, then that can really wear your ears out. But it's a lot of work for your ears. I think with any sound recording, not necessarily just a voice recording, the main thing is to make sure that you're not just occupying one part of the frequency spectrum. For example, listening to a sound recording that just sounded like it came down the telephone line is very narrow. What's more pleasing to the ear is a variety of sounds. So that's why when you hear a piece of music and you hear a nice, say a low-end bass or cello or something that accompanied by some high-end sounds, it's more a richer sound for your ears, rather than something which was just, if it was just say a drum, sort of sounds. That's kind of a very narrow thing. But introduce some acoustic guitar to that, and it suddenly brings it to life. Introduce some voice to that. Again, I guess anyone who's a music producer would probably they'd be an expert in this, is the way you layer in different instruments. You're actually managing to cover different parts of the frequency spectrum, which is much more pleasing on the ear, I think.
Thank you very much for watching. If you really enjoyed this, please press the thumbs up and subscribe. There's going to be heaps and heaps and heaps of more information coming onto the channel. Stay tuned, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.